Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts off explaining how magic is an amazing power, that people say is a trace left behind by God himself. Magic swordsmen are 1 in 1,000, mages are 1 in 10,000. For the first time in the Burial Empire, a gifted mage became emperor at a young age, which opened a prime era for mages. The first area we're introduced to is a prison cell. We see a man mocking someone saying there's nothing good about magic, as only inferior people use it. He tells the prisoner that he's helpless against magic restraints, and the man is his uncle named Ian. Ian replies saying, "Crony, you haven't changed at all." Crony asks what he means. Ian says there's something he would often tell him when he was younger. About how mages are rare, but most of them are peasant. And if people find out about it, it means he'll be kicked out, so he needs to hide it. But Ian understands now that he's older, that Crony told all of him this because he is envious of magic users. Crony smacks him, saying to shut up. Asking why it's important when he's standing over him, he steps on him saying he's now beneath him. And that he acts like he wants to die, so he has no choice. He says since they are family he'll make it nice and quick. A guard quickly runs into the room, telling Crony that there's a message from Duke Hillen. Crony clicks his tongue and gives Ian a nasty look, and tells the guard he's on his way. Ian says that this is how it ends for him, at the very least he's done what he could have. His life is going to end like this, but someone will remember him as the Emperor Ian Veroshin. Someone wakes him up calling for him, and we learn their name is Naum. Ian asks how he got in here. He says there is no time to explain. Ian says he became a mage and the Emperor, thanks to him, but now he just wants to give up. Naum asks if he remembers the separate building for magic next to the secondary palace, saying he used to hide there all the time, and he'd catch him crying. He was told Todd if he went to that building he would be given another chance. He doesn't know why it had to be there, but something like that he will have to figure out himself. He begins to cast magic on them. Ian asks what he's doing. Naum writes some of it in blood, and Ian tries to get him to undo it. Naum says it's too late, as he's already given his blood. Ian says this is forbidden magic. Crony quickly runs back in saying he knew he would try something, asking what the hell is going on here. Naum tells Ian to keep this in mind, that God doesn't give them problems without answers, and is beheaded by Crony, who says that's some bullshit. Ian is stunned by what he witnessed. Crony raises his sword saying that he prays he isn't born in the next life, and beheads him too. His life begins to flash before his eyes, as Naum's final words echo throughout his head. The clock begins to rewind, and he is face to face with his younger self. We're taken to a fancy estate, with someone yelling at Ian, asking if he can't walk, telling him to get up. Some people are laughing saying they took him in out of pity because his inferior mother, but there's nothing to like about him. Ian says his head hurts. The man asks them to watch their insults, as Sir Molan might hear it. The woman says it seems like he still thinks of him as his son, and the chubby kid says his mother is right. Ian wonders what's going on, saying his head hurts and they are being loud. He wonders where he is, and who these people are. He spots a mirror and asks who he is seeing in the mirror. The man tells Ian to behave properly, and not to embarrass him in front of Sir Molan, and that it'll go smoothly if the Emperor hears about this. Ian wonders if he means himself. Ian wonders if he means him and is confused. The man sighs, saying again with a stupid face, and pulls out a document. He shows him the Emperor's edict, saying he didn't show him since he's illiterate, but he should look at it at least. Ian is confused since he hasn't given an edict any time recently, but is shocked to see that the date is over 98 years ago. Chubby takes the paper asking why he's pretending like he can read. The father says that they put in a lot of effort to bring him here, so stop fooling around and behave properly. Some maids overhear this, saying that this will be the first time Ian is experiencing this, and they wonder if there will be another incident. Ian looks at the clock, saying he isn't familiar with the Emperor of this year, and he's not even familiar with the face in the mirror. He says it's definitely a result of Naum's space-time magic. It jumps us to another part of the building. There is a steak and Ian is munching on it. While his family is confused, Ian says that after all the prison food it looks like he got too used to eating without dignity. Molan tells Ian that his dining etiquette is admirable. The father says that he's too kind, but tells Molan he hopes he speaks to the Emperor for them. Molan says that philosophy is hot these days, asking what Ian's thoughts are, but decides he should ask young Master Chell since he's the eldest son. He asks Chell his favorite philosopher. Chell is dumbfounded, because he is just dumb. He nervously sweats, and Ian says that he must be trying to determine the education standards of the household. Ian says he enjoys Philin. Molan is surprised he reads Philin. Says if you study his humanistic ideology you can read and understand it, which is ideal for the path of a monarch. Molan says that to think he'd know of Philin's philosophy when it just begun to spread really shows how high their standards are. The father says he's speaking too highly of them. Molan says that since his son is so intelligent, even the barbarians in the east would welcome him. Ian says he must be talking about the Heavenly Warrior clan. There's only one area on the border where the Empire and the Heavenly Warrior clan intersects. It is the Brock territory. In the past the Brock family signed a peace treaty with them. Ian's father puts his hand on his. They brought a bastard son named Ian into the family for the peace treaty, and gave him to the barbarians as a hostage. Which is what his father says. Ian smiles saying yes father. It jumps to later, with Chell angrily yelling asking how dare he humiliate him, asking if he thinks he's a noble for joining the family. Ian says that if he wasn't a noble of the Brock family then Chell would have been sent to the barbarians instead. Chell grabs a pot and throws it at Ian asking how dare he speak to him informally. The vase shatters, a piece of glass cuts Ian asking if he wants to die along with his mother, saying he was living like trash yet now he's acting up. Ian's eyes begin to glow, as he releases his magical power, telling Chell he's an arrogant child. Chell falls to the floor, and looks up in fear. Ian says he should know the weight of his words, and he can survive with a shorter tongue. So he needs to watch himself before he cuts it off. Chell cowers yelling not to get any closer. A door opens, and Ian turns to see Molan saying he's brought some refreshments. But he sees Ian's magical aura. Molan is speechless, and the father asks him what's wrong. The mother walks in too. To see Chell on the floor, asking what's going on. Chell stutters trying to tell him. Ian walks beside him saying he told him to be careful around vases, and calls Chell his older brother, offering to help him up. The father yells for a maid named Hannah to quickly take Ian to his room. She tells Ian he should go to his chambers. As Ian leaves he overhears the father asking Chell why he's so clumsy. Molan definitely saw what happened, but didn't say anything. Outside of the main chambers, we see Ian's small room. He says this shit is bleak. Hanan asks if he has the letter from his mother. He asks what she means. She says he cried every day asking her to send a letter since she can't leave. Ian says this pitiful boy was imprisoned and unable to run away. He tells her he won't cry anymore. She then asks for her pay. He asks what she means. She says that she has 5 younger siblings. They can only eat if he gives her food. He asks if she means from his meals, and she says yes, but at least for today. He thinks about it, saying sure but he has a condition, and to help him later when he asks too. She says of course, and thanks him while looking happy. He closes the door and sighs, saying this is a pain. Space-time magic is supposed to bring one back to when it was cast, but somehow he got sent way too far back and is in a different body. If he wants answers he needs to go to the Ministry of Magic. He has to get there at all costs. Inside of Ian's room, he's practicing his magic. Saying he's glad he can use it, since it's rare that he got a body that has the ability to. But coincidentally his name is Ian just like his. He says there's definitely more to this. Hannah tells him she's brought his meal, and he says she can leave it there. He opens his door and sees the aftermath of her taking some of his meal, saying she took a big chunk. But says this is still too little food, and he recalls the banquet with Molan, and he remembers they didn't have gula at the feast. It's a plant that has a lot of nutrients and is a staple food of burial. Other than the seed being poisonous, it was treated as a weed. But it won't be treated as food for another 50 years. If he were to spread his knowledge about gula it would be possible to erase the burial's history of famine. Later in the day he's talking to his father, who is telling him about a feast in a few days, saying other aides from the Central will be attending. Ian says he'll make sure not to cause trouble. He says that's good, and that his mother sent him something. He hands him a bag, saying there's some coins and a letter inside, and he can ask his tutor to read it aloud for him. He says depending on how he does he'll let him see his mother's face before training. A butler enters calling for the Margrave. He stands up and exits the room. Ian says he can't find anything resembling feelings from the Margrave, and he feels sorry for this body's mother. Something catches his eye on the desk, and he picks it up to reveal a letter. He starts to read it, but is surprised to see that it's a second account book. He realizes he must be siphoning the tax that should have gone to the Central, and he's quite bold. This is probably why Sir Molan came all the way here. The door opens. Ian quickly cuts the lights off with magic to hide the fact he's snooping from his father. The butler says they must be faulty, and trips throwing papers everywhere. The Margrave tells him it's fine, and just to pick up the papers. Then he sees Ian is still there, and quickly opens the curtains to see Ian is still in here, and he's standing there with the bag in his hand. He sees the papers still on his desk, asking what he's been doing here all of this time. Ian says he never told him to leave. The Margrave says the barbarians requested for a letter with his signature. Ian asks why his. He says they are a hassle, and he should send them letters occasionally. He'll let his tutor know so he can copy what he writes. The Margrave tells Ian he can leave now. He says understood. Ian starts to read the letter, saying even though he is illiterate the mother keeps writing him letters. The letter is the mother asking how he's doing, saying she is living well. And to work hard for Chell and build a friendship, and once he arrives in the barbarians' lands. Just from reading that he laughs, saying that his suspicions are correct. It cuts to the feast mentioned previously, and the Margrave tells Molen it's good to see him. Another man introduces himself as Digger, and another man introduces himself as Mac. The mother says she hopes they have a wonderful time and asks if they are ready to eat. Molen says that Ian seems to be looking more outstanding every time he sees him. Ian says that it must be because he was looking forward to today, and he's curious about the capital. Mac asks what he's curious about. Ian says he can use this to check how capable they are, asking what they eat. They say there's nothing special in the capital, and it's similar to the Margrave side. The rich eat well and the rest eat plainly. Digger says it would be nice to have new types of dishes. Ian says on that topic, can't food they think is inedible actually turn out to be food? Saying there's no good or bad when it comes to nature, they should just be grateful they can satisfy their hunger. They are all speechless, and Max says he sounds just like the prince. Ian asks who, and Digger says he's talking about Gale. Ian says he was the one who started an uprising and led magicians but failed. Ian wonders if this means they are Gale's people. Max says he's sure they'd get along well. Ian says there's no point getting close to traitors, but he can make use of them. Molen says regrettably time passed quickly, but that he has a small request. The Margrave asks what it is. Molen says he'd like to take Ian and get some fresh air. The Margrave asks if he can send Chell too. Molen laughs saying it's always better to have more people. It cuts to them all walking, and Piggy is gassed out asking if they are there yet. Max says almost, and if it's too tiring they can take a break, and he stares at Molen. Digger tells Molen he and Mac will keep Chell company while he rests. So they tell Molen and Ian they can go ahead. Molen tells Ian he saw his eyes flash golden, asking if he is perhaps a magic user. Ian thinks about his reply, saying he's not sure what he's talking about. Molen says that Prince Gale is always open to getting to know magic users, as magicians are pretty rare. Ian asks if that's the only reason. Molen asks what he means. Ian asks if that's all he's curious about, saying he's sure there's more he'd like to ask him. Molen looks to the side, and Ian asks if he's here to investigate the fake Margrave account, saying he also desires it, asking if he'd like to make a deal with him. Molen says that's interesting, asking if he's going to bring the Margrave's second ledger. We finally learn his father's name is Vrats. Ian asks if he gives him the ledger what he will do for him, saying he doesn't want to get caught up in the crime. He says he's not part of the Vrats family yet, so he won't have to worry about anything, or even being sent to the barbarians. Ian says that isn't what he wants. A way to protect himself from the severe punishment of the Imperial Palace, and gain ownership. He plans to go to the barbarians without being registered. Molen asks if he knows what that means. Ian says yes and that his father will suspect him first since he was close to him, so he needs to ensure his safety by going to the barbarians. The Heavenly Warrior clan doesn't have a good relationship with either the Brock family, or the Imperial Palace. So it'll be easier to befriend them. And as a powerful warrior clan they'd be an excellent card to have. Saying Molen won't protect him or his mother after all. Molen is taken aback by this, and quickly changes the topic saying Chell is late and he should greet him. Ian says to please do. Ian says he'll stay longer, and Molen says it'd be a good chance to explain his hometown before leaving. Ian tells Molen he may leave, and he does so. Ian says the Brock family fell soon, and given his status he can't set foot in the Imperial Palace. So he needs to make sure of that, by giving the second ledger to Molen, helping the family fall apart. He must make the Margraves family his. Before that he needs to ally with the Heavenly Warrior clan to establish a backing. That is his shortcut to getting deep into the Imperial Palace. As he walks back, he spots someone, shaking while holding a flower pot. He puts his hand on their shoulder, asking how they've been. She begins to tear up as it is his mother. She asks him how he's been. He says he's glad to see her, and Hannah told him he should come here. Hannah told his mother where he would be, and how she's so energetic. He says that he's been well, and he received the things she sent him. He tells her he's sorry that he hasn't been in touch more often. He asks her if she sent all of this gold. She says there's no way she'd have that much. He tells her she should take it then, and she should leave. He'll tell Hannah to tell her more of the details. She begins to shake, saying something is going on, isn't it? Saying if he wants to run from the Margraves household then run, and just sending him here has been painful. She cries saying if it's too hard then to run. He tells her not to worry, his eyes begin to glow. She tells him that he won't run away, and to promise to respect his wishes. Molen and the rest arrive, and he says it's time to go. He tells his mother to get some gula seeds, and to take care until they meet again. She hands him the flower pot, saying it's the flower pot he used to care for. He picks it up and smiles, thanking her for bringing it to him. The next day Ian is telling Chell he noticed they are both not in good shape. He says Chell got permission quickly and he's the best. Chell quickly asks why they are starting to train today. Ian says it's just the first day so it'll probably be light. And he's sure the captain will adjust it as he sees fit. The captain seems drunk as his face is flushed, and he stumbles over asking Chell why he's here. Chell says he wanted to check out the training grounds. The captain asks why, saying he's never shown up before. Chell says he's the successor, he can visit as he likes. He says he's a bit chubby, and wants to train a bit, and he should be able to defend himself when his guard is shit-faced. The captain says whatever, asking him to follow him around. He shows him around where the training ground is, along with where they sleep for some reason. We hear a whipping sound, and we see people being punished. Chell asks who they are. The captain says they are orphans. The captain laughs, saying if Ian wasn't lucky he'd be there too. Ian asks Chell if that's true. Chell tells the captain Theo to stop doing that. Ian tunes them out and he realizes that the other orphans are gassed out, but he sees one of them isn't even tired. We learn his name is Barrack and he's a pain in the ass. We hear him get whipped again, and Chell says his spirit is no joke. Theo says he's useful in his own way, but that he's extremely untalented, so he lacks the skill. Which is quite unfortunate. Theo says there are some things that are unattainable no matter how hard you work. Knowing when to give up is important. He should live knowing his place. He says all of this while staring at Ian. Ian says since it looks like training is over they should call everyone over and rest in the shade. Saying he empathizes with Barrack, since he would have been there if he was unlucky. He approaches Barrack asking if he can stand up. Barrack asks who he is. Ian introduces himself. Barrack tells him to get lost. Ian says that's rude, and that he isn't thinking straight so he'll overlook this. He raises his head, but Barrack shakes his head saying to go and leave him alone. Ian starts to pour water infused with mana onto him, saying sometimes people show rejection when their bodies come into contact with mana. So he wonders how Barrack will react to it. It might have been faint, but he felt something. The energy of a magic swordsman. Barrack smacks the canteen out of his hands, asking what the hell he put in the water. Ian says nothing, and it looks like he's regained his energy so he'll take his leave. Barrack sits up saying now that he thinks about it he feels energized. He calls out to Ian who just walks away. Ian writes a letter to his mother saying he's doing well, and not to worry. He hopes she stays healthy until he returns, then he starts to write some of his favorite lyrics. He asks his professor if this is correct, and he says yes he is doing well. Ian thanks him, he says it wasn't much of a hassle anyways. Ian says he looks busy, asking if there's an important appointment. He says yes, asking if it's that noticeable. Ian says he seems different than usual. He tells the tutor he heard that he graduated from Varial University in the capital. He asks if he has any acquaintances, saying if it's too awkward he doesn't have to answer. He says the question is quite sudden, and quickly leaves the room. Ian spots him drop a piece of paper that is on the climate change in the Great Desert. The next day we see Chell running, asking how long he has to keep this up. Theo says 40 minutes to go. He tells them to keep running. While they are running Ian hears them yelling at Barrack. We see Barrack running in, and swinging at his opponent. He dodges, but Barrack gets annoyed and barrages him. The guy blocks it, and says he's pissing him off, knocking Barrack into a wall. He says to stop bothering others. Barrack calls out to him, saying Meryl. This pisses him off, asking how dare he say his name. Barrack stands up saying they aren't done yet. His eyes full of anger, Meryl sighs, asking if he wants to die early. Then kicks him in the chest, saying he told him to stop earlier. He spits on him, saying he won't live long if he doesn't know his place. We see Barrack leaning against some boxes. Everyone starts talking and we hear Ian call out to him. Barrack asks what he wants, since he told him to screw off. Ian says if he wants to win to find a strategy. Barrack says he won't resort to petty tricks to win. Ian asks if that's the case. Barrack grips his sword saying he'll kill him if he keeps yapping. Ian says you poor thing, and pats his head. Saying he'll help him, but in return he'll have to help him too. I think he imbues some mana into him. He takes his hand off Barrack. Ian says he knew it. Barrack leaps at Meryl like a rabid dog. Meryl turns to the side, to see Barrack flying in. He's smiling while he crushes Meryl into the floor. Meryl insults him, and gets smacked in the face, over and over and over again. Everyone is shocked. They quickly run over to pull him off asking if he's gone crazy. But notice he's hella strong right now. They managed to subdue him with 3 people. Barrack starts to laugh and looks really refreshed, saying this is how it should be. And that Meryl is an idiot for turning his back to him. Theo kicks him in the face, and tells the rest to take Meryl to the infirmary, and to take Barrack to the punishment area. He looks over to see Ian, asking if he did anything to him. Ian says no, he just insulted him. Theo says they can wrap it up for today, as the training ground is too chaotic. Ian asks what will happen to Barrack. Theo says they'll need to figure it out, and he thinks he'll get whipped a few more times, and then kicked out. Ian says this wasn't his intention, but it works out for him. It'll be easier to pick him up if he has no affiliation. Later in the day he is talking to Molan and his group asking if he's made up his mind. Molan nods saying that the Margrave usually knows about these things. He tells Ian they need his help. Ian says alright, He'll compile all of the data for the harvested grains, along with the mining output and the farmer's taxes. Molan says that will help them a ton. They respect his decision. Ian says he was right, and that the seal that Sir Molan is wearing is the same one on the paper the tutor dropped. So there must be a connection between them, so he'll make use of this in the future. After the meeting he is walking back, and gets grabbed by the collar, pulled into an alleyway. The butler thought he heard something, and his co-worker asked if he ripped ass. He says nah, maybe it's just a wild dog. We see Beric being a little Seuss with Ian against a wall. Ian says that's a weird greeting, asking Beric how he got in here. Beric says he made a scene all night, and the head butler said he could come in any time. Ian realizes that Vratz already has eyes on him. He asks Beric what he wants. Beric asks if he drugged him, saying every time he's met him his body has felt off. And he better speak up, as he doesn't want to fight with cheap methods. Ian says that his brain is low-key smooth. He says the water he gave him wasn't his, but from the supplies, and he only put his hand on his head. Beric asks then why he felt strange. Ian says he can tell him, but before that he needs to promise something. That he needs to keep quiet about his golden eyes. He says that he also shouldn't be impolite. Beric instantly yells saying yes, those are the eyes he saw. Ian wonders if this is doomed, asking him to listen properly. He says to stay by his side as a bodyguard, and that the power he felt, the power that's hidden within him, he will help him make it his own. Beric wonders what he means by his own power. Ian asks if he knows what a magic swordsman is. Beric says no. He realizes that the time gap is too big. Then tells him to listen closely. There are a few in this world who have the power to resonate with their souls, that is called magic. He has the potential for magic, but that same magic blocks his energy, so training is useless for him. So he needs to use the magic inside him. Beric says he just told him that it's blocking him though. Ian says they need to develop the path that connects the energies of his body and soul. Beric asks if he's going to make that path for him. Ian says he needs to listen first. Beric says they need to start right away. Ian asks if he understands what he'll be doing, saying he'll need to follow him around. Beric asks why that matters, saying he has no home or family. Ian says he might die. Beric says he'll starve to death if he doesn't follow him now. Ian says he likes that, and asks for his hand. Beric gives it to him. He says that he's stubborn and reckless, but that'll make him suitable to be a magic swordsman. They say the greater the magic swordsman is, the more determined they are. They never give up, they never pass up a chance to fight. And have no fear of death. There's no match for a warrior who doesn't fear death. Burke starts to smile as the mana swirls within him. Ian also smiles at this. They do the Arnold handshake. Ian says he looks forward to their future together. It cuts to Ian talking to Vratz, whose words are going in and out of his ears. It's very obvious, and Vratz calls him out on it. Ian spots a ring on his hand, saying it doesn't seem like Vratz has any interest in jewelry, but he always has a ring on. He wonders if it's a wedding ring, but says it's a weird cut. Ornamental gems are usually cut to reflect a ton of light, but seeing how bluntly the ring was cut, it seems to serve another purpose. He heard that sound in the office too. Ian thinks about it for a bit, and Vratz tells him to focus on his meal. Ian apologizes. Vratz says it seems like he's made a friend. Ian says he must mean Beric. Ian says they met in the training field, and have a lot in common. He thought they wouldn't meet again when he was kicked out after making a mistake, but they met again due to Vratz's help. The mother asks what got him kicked out. Ian says he beat someone up. She says to keep someone like that near him it makes him, but gets cut off by Vratz saying it doesn't matter who he hangs out with. Just don't be lazy about his studies, and if he cannot learn to read and write within a month he'll take it as him having been lazy with Beric. And he'll break his neck. Back in the garden, we see the tutor and Molan meeting. He tells the tutor good luck, and the tutor sighs after he leaves. Ian says he was looking for him, but it seems he was talking to Molan. The tutor says it was just a greeting. Ian says that was quite a long greeting. He says it's normal for there to be disagreements with the capital, but what would Vratz say if he found out about the fact that the central administrator and a tutor spent so long talking behind the manor? And that he'd be quite worried about what he would do. The tutor says they didn't talk much, asking if he could consider as he didn't say anything. Ian says on one condition. The tutor asks what? He says to go talk to his father tomorrow, and it doesn't matter about what, he just needs him out of the office for 30 minutes. He asks if that's all. Ian says there's one more thing. And it seems like he knows a lot about the desert, asking if he can get a map of desert along with information about its climate. He says he's a smart person so he knows what he means. The tutor bows saying yes he understands. Back inside of his room, Ian uses magic to construct a mental image of the ring so he can use it as reference and draw and deliver it. He starts to draw it, and then we see Hannah confused asking why he drew a ring, saying that it looks similar to Margraves. He says she recognized it instantly. She says he never wears his wedding ring, only this. And it's really unique so he often looks at it. He says she's observant. However, it's strange that he had to make the key a diamond. Unless there's a reason it had to be one. Then something clicks, and he says non-conductive, saying that since it's a secret drawer it must have something to do with electricity. He tells Hannah she gave him a good idea, and to make sure to ask a carpenter to recreate it with wood and use a rubber cover. Back inside of the Margraves' office, we see the door opens and the tutor thanks him for talking to him, saying this will take some time to discuss. So they need to go elsewhere. Ian lurks behind a corner, and he watches them leave. He asks Hannah if she has the thing he asked for. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out the ring. He says the size seems right, and it's covered with rubber. The carpenter must be quite skilled. He tells her good work, and gives her gold, saying this should stop her siblings from starving. He tells her to keep an eye on the stairs. She says okay. Barak also appears, and asks why he has to do this. He tells him to make sure nobody enters, surely he can manage that. Barak says to leave it to him, after he imbues him with mana. Ian tells him that it's really important. But he'll be right back. He enters the office, getting behind the desk, he finds a hole underneath it. And touches it with the ring, it makes a clicking sound and opens a drawer. He says he's glad it isn't complicated, but is surprised to find letters from the Heavenly Warrior clan. He can't really understand the language, so decides to make his own copy. He says if he puts down specific numbers and stamp it with a seal it should look more legitimate. The capital will probably compare it to the tax reports the Margrave turned in. He starts to stack it back into order. And a knock on the door asks if the Margrave is inside. The butler enters the room to see Ian. His eyes begin to glow as he releases his aura. It cuts to the Margrave asking how dare the butler go into his study, asking what the hell he was doing. The head butler agrees, saying he has no clue what's going on. The Margrave says to throw him away. The head butler asks what he means. The Margrave shouts loud enough for everyone to hear it. He says to take away all of his possessions and throw him away. We see a lot of maids and butlers running around the estate. Barak asks if the incident is resolved. Ian says it could have been dangerous. Barak says he almost died. Then asks if the Margrave knows stuff was stolen from his study. Ian says even if he does he'll just blame the butler. Ian says that it was actually a great thing that Barak didn't stop the butler from entering the room. But that there's a problem. The letter and map he received from the tutor says there is a risk of a sandstorm on the dates he'll be passing through, so to exercise extreme caution. And that the contents of the memo are asking about the leader after the female chief. Ian wonders why this was so important he had to keep it in his secret drawer. It seems like they are writing back and forth. Barak says he understands now. That the black things are letters, and the white thing is paper. Ian says he knows quite a lot. And asks if he remembers what he said earlier. He says of course he does. 1 to burn the key he gave him, 2 to give the paper to Sir Malene and get gold, and 3 to deliver a message to Philia. Ian says good, asking if he remembers the message to his mother. Barak says that it's to go into hiding immediately and gather gullah seeds. Ian says good, he's obtained an excellent guard. Barak says it's nothing much. Ian hears a horse outside, and looks down to see a camel horse thing and a robed figure. He asks Barak which gate he'll use to leave. Barak says the main gate, but Ian suggests he use the back gate. As the Heavenly Warrior clan have arrived, one of them make eye contact with him. So it might get quite loud tonight. That night, Vrats tells him to introduce himself. And the man he made eye contact with is Nur Sarn, the younger brother of Chief Kakonar. His full name is Balamay Chin Nur Sarn. Ian introduces himself, and Vrats asks what brought him here so suddenly. Nur Sarn says the vice chief's condition is suffering, and he would like to move up their family's schedule for amity. It's all for the sake of the future, so please understand. The Heavenly Warrior clan values their vice chief's death more than their chief's. Because unlike the chief who became leader through battle, the vice chief is their spiritual leader. Their traditions dictate that the entire tribe holds a 1-year memorial service, making them want to proceed with this. And, before he can finish his thought, Vrats says while their circumstances are unfortunate, why should they do that? Nursern says that their vice chief Winchen is special. He's led them with his eyes of truth for countless years. Every tribesman has had to face his gaze, and even Ian will have to face it and be accepted by him. Vrats asks if he's doubting his blood, saying they've sent a document from the Empire to verify it. Nursarn says that's just a scrap of paper. Nursarn says he's told him before that Ian is the son of his late second wife. But a piece of paper can't prove he wasn't a child picked up off the streets. Ian says they want to use the eyes of truth to determine if he's Vrats' son, saying it makes sense. As even if he's the Margrave, it's strange he had people from the capital come down to add Ian to the registry. It's hard to tell what would happen to the Amity affair if Winchen dies now. Since he could use sudden schedule changes as an excuse, it would be good, but for some reason the Margrave is hesitating. He wraps his hand around Ian, saying he understands. Since his son will need to prove himself, why don't they rest today and talk tomorrow? And he'll have them guided to their rooms. Nursarn thanks him, and he hopes he makes a swift decision for peace. We hear Vrats yelling saying this is why they shouldn't associate with barbarians. He seems sharp, probably because he is the chief's brother. He tells Ian he'll take care of the registration document, so just stay silent until he returns. Ian says yes sir. Vrat slams the carriage door closed and leaves. Ian smiles saying he must be in a rush to expedite the registration process. But he can't believe he left like that, and he made it quite easy for him to have a conversation with them now. Ian says that they must be exhausted after their trip, telling them to enjoy their food. And he just wants them to listen to his proposal while they eat. Nursarn asks what it is. Ian says that a friend of his wants to go with them. Nursarn says that only Ian is meant to go, saying anyone else would be a burden. Ian says nah, and that he'll surely be of help. It's of course Beric he wants to bring. Ian says that Beric is good at fighting. Nursarn laughs, saying they sure do know how to make them laugh. Ian asks what he means. Nursarn says to them he is nothing more than a freeloader, that wants them to babysit 2 kids who have no poison resistance, nor can they survive without water in the desert. Ian says he knows what they are worried about, but they will really be of help. They'll be helpful in combat, and that he isn't smart. But they don't need to worry and they'll be fine in the desert. Nursarn says that he will think about if he is able to fight against the heavenly warriors and win. Outside of the estate, a woman asks why it had to be her. Saying this is why being the youngest sucks. Her name is Sue and she says they've got 5 minutes. Beric asks if he's meant to fight someone so small. He says they called it a competition, but there's nobody watching. Ian says not to let his guard down, and if he underestimates her since she looks weak he'll get hurt. Ian says they aren't watching since they are unmatched in power. Beric spots Nursarn watching from a window, and Ian tells him his nickname is the God of Death. Beric asks if they are being looked down on since he's watching so far away. Ian says to calm down, and to focus on winning. Ian begins to imbue him with mana. Saying to listen carefully, he'll tell him how to win. A bit later, she asks if they are ready yet. Sue says that it will only take 5 minutes. If he knocks her down in that time she'll acknowledge him. Beric says that's more than enough, and starts to put his hair up. Telling her not to cry after being beaten. He dashes forward, and goes in for a punch. Sue says the one crying will be him, and she quickly moves behind him. He turns to face her, but is too late. He goes for another swing and she asks where he's swinging at. Saying he wasn't even close. She puts her hand on the ground, kicking him in the face. He grits his teeth to withstand it, and manages to keep his balance. She says that if he's this slow he is just going to get beaten up during the entire 5 minutes. Beric asks why she's yapping so much, saying there's still a lot of time their fight continues. Ian watching says that's expected. Beric is just being bodied. She does a barrage of punches, and he blocks them while looking for an opening. He sees her smiling, and she goes for a big kick. As she's in the air, Ian casts magic telling Beric now is the time. Beric looks ready. He catches her kick, which surprises her. He says caught you, and asks her how she likes it now, as he puts her on the floor. She says to get off, and he says this means he won. And if this was a real fight she'd be dead. He tells her not to feel bad, while rubbing stuff on her face. Ian says that this is why they sent her out, so there'd be no bloodshed. He tells her to go admit they won, and he'll erase the mark. Or she can live the rest of her life with it on. She looks angry, but agrees saying to get this pig off her. Poor Beric caught astray. Ian looks up, telling him to get off her. As Nursarn is watching, Ian smiles saying their negotiation is finished now. Back inside the room Nursarn says he said it was a sparring session, but to play such tricks. It feels like an insult. Ian says he's sorry he feels that way, but isn't it better than her leaving with wounds on her face? Nursarn asks if he's mocking him. Ian asks if that's what he thinks. He says to look at Sue's face, what would have happened if she were beaten instead? Nursarn stares, then smiles while laughing loudly. He says that was bold, and that they've lost. He says he'll permit Beric to go with them. Ian thanks him. Sue asks if he's happy now, saying to get this shit off her face. Beric asks if she's mad. The next day it's Nursarn meeting with Vrats again. Nursarn says that their clan would like to express their gratitude for him understanding. Vrats says to tell Winchen he is wishing him good fortune. Nursarn says Damasha, which is like a goodbye in their language. A week later on the day of the peace ceremony. Hannah hugs Ian saying she wishes he returns safely. She cries saying that Ellen wants to make him food for his birthday, so please come back. And to take care of his body. He tells her to listen carefully. If possible he'd like her to stop working after he leaves. She asks what he means. He says that he knows it'll be hard, but it's advantageous for her. She should escape quickly. He thanks her for everything she's done so far. He looks out the window, saying that his life here is over, and that it's time to go to the Great Desert. We see them making it to one of the meeting places of the Heavenly Warrior clan. The chieftain greets Vrats, and introduces himself. His name is Kakanur. Vrats returns the favor. Cockhonour says since everyone is here they should sign the agreement. Vrats looks over it, then pulls out a homogeneity potion to prove they're blood related. They both drop their blood on it, and Nar Sarn whispers something to his brother. He says that they need Winchen to confirm things on their end, so they'll do it after they return. Vrats thinks that the barbarians are dumb for taking their shaman's word over the potion. He tells them to do as they wish. Cockhonour cuts his hand, signing the contract in blood. They say Damasha again. I guess it's like WoW NPCs saying honor be with you. They go back outside, and Vrats hugs Ian saying to take care. Then tells him to remember the reason he is alive. Ian says of course, telling him it's for the honor of the Brock family. He rides away, leaving only dust remaining. Later in the day it was time for them to head out. Barrick is chugging their water, while Ian shows them the tutor's map. They make it to their destination, and the people thank Cocken, nickname, for his hard work. Some people ask which one Ian is, and they all agree it's the blonde one. Cocken asks one of the men how Winchen is doing. They tell him he's recovering. Cocken says that's good, and tells Ian to follow him. Ian does so, and they head into a room filled with smoke. Cocken leans by the bed, and tells Winchen that this is Ian, who is here due to the Brock agreement. Cocken helps her Seachup, and she starts mumble rapping. He tells her that shit was fire, and tells Ian it'd be hard for him to understand due to her dialect. She says that she will confirm if he is suitable, and to get close to her. Ian approaches the bed, she grabs his hand. Asking if he is here by the will of God, we can see his old self shrouded over the new one. If you've watched till the end, comment, DayZ, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.